Hey guys, I'm looking good, haven't I? Ih, something lupa lah. Cut. Finish. Nanti kau tolong. Let's do this. Hey guys, I'm looking good, haven't I? So my name is Ahmad Badran bin Muhammad Nasir, and we are going to introduce to you about Scotland, the difference between Malaysian culture and the Scotland culture. So if you want to watch, let's go. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to talk about is national food. So if you want to see, let me show you. We are going to talk about Scottish national dish, which is haggis or haggis. Haggis, made of sheep intestines, covered with the sheep's stomach, minced onion, oats, salt and spices. So what is the origin of haggis? So as a research, I came to this one website and I saw that this one person, James McSween, director of McSween's, the award-winning Edinburgh haggis maker, said that whatever its origin, the pudding remains a Scottish icon. He also said, haggis is now renowned as Scotland's dish largely due to Robert Burns, who made it famous. So, I'm going to talk about this one interesting story that I found. So, here we go. Where academics and historians fail to explain the origins of haggis, popular folklore did its best to fill in the gap. From tales of Highland drovers taking long trips to drive their cattle to the southern capital, their wives creating rations for the long journeys, to stories of benevolent lairds and chieftains allowing the workmen who slaughtered their cattle to keep the offal. So, it's interesting, isn't it? So there you go. It's haggis. Yeah, it's haggis. But on the other hand, Scottish also has their own food. For example, tea cakes, tablet, iron brew, shortbread, and caramel wafer. They also have another, but these are all the famous thing. And as you can see, it is all sweet theme. So if you have a sweet tooth, you better go to Scottish. However, Malaysia also have their own national dish, which is nasi lemak. Don't forget the teh tarik, everyone's favorite beverage, yet the young one to the elderly. Malaysia also have their own Negeri's food, which Melaka is cencalok, Kelantan nasi kerabu, and Terengganu nasi dagang, including others negeri. Wow, pretty interesting, eh? They differentiate between Scottish and Malaysia. But why is all about food, huh? Wait, there's more.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi, annyeonghaseyo. My name is Muhammad Ismail bin Salmi, and I'm here to continue my group's video about Scotland's famous places, attractions, and what Scotland is famous for. But before that, okay, now that I'm ready, let's continue.
Okay, so I'm going to start about Scotland's national identity. One of their identity is, of course, their national animal. For example, Malaysia, we have our Malayan tigers, right? But Scotland is actually one out of 15 countries that have a mythological creature as their national animal. It is the unicorn. Yes, this majestic looking animal is indeed Scotland's national animal. Unicorns are often depicted as this pure, innocent, yet powerful mythological creature. This is one of many differences that Scotland has as their identity. Like I said, there are other countries which have a mythological creature as their national animal. For example, we have China, they have the dragon, and our neighboring country, Indonesia, they have the Garuda bird. Moving on, Scotland also has thistle as their national flower. Yes, this cute but prickly looking flower plant. While us Malaysians, we have the hibiscus as our national flower. Okay, so let's continue about what Scotland is famous for. One thing that we know, Scotland is famous for the Loch Ness Monster. Loch Ness Monster also has a nickname. The nickname is Nessie. The first recorded sightings of this monster was by Mr. Mackenzie in 1871 or 1872. At the time, Mackenzie didn't tell anyone about his sightings. But the story about Nessie began receiving headlines based on this single picture in 1934, known as the surgeon's photograph. However, until now, we still haven't found any real proof of the Loch Ness Monster's existence. Okay, so next on the list, we have bagpipes. We all know how Irish and Scottish people all loves bagpipes, right? But Scottish bagpipes in particular, they are called Great Highlands bagpipes. Scottish people really loves playing bagpipes. They play at weddings and even funerals. So this shows that bagpipes can be used in multiple occasions. Moreover, because Scotland are a part of the British Empire, the bagpipes are even played in countries that were formerly under the British Empire. And yes, this includes Malaysia, Singapore, India, Pakistan, and even Nepal. Okay, now let's get into tourist attractions. For the first place, we have Edinburgh Castle and the Royal Mile. Well, first of all, it's pronounced Edinburgh, even though it's spelled Edinburgh. And Edinburgh is one of the most fortified places in Europe, and it is home to the oldest crown jewels. Crown jewels is basically the king and queens of England's crown with other much more valuable items. So, if Scotland's have the Edinburgh Castle, what does Malaysia have? Well, we Malaysians, we have the Kelly's Castle. To my surprise, Kelly's Castle was built by William Kelly Smith, whom is actually a Scottish. And lastly, I'm going to introduce you to the Jacobite steam train. So what is special about this steam train? This train is actually used throughout the shooting of the whole Harry Potter franchise. So, Potter fans, also called Potterheads, are all welcome to this train to experience a ride to Hogwarts. Well, not Hogwarts, but actually to Fort Williams instead. After doing a bit of research, I found out that Malaysia also have places where some famous movie actors and actresses have shoot here before, such as Jackie Chan for Police Story 3 and Chris Hemsworth in the movie Black Hat. Before I end this video, let's watch a short clip by Insider about the Jacobite steam train.
Hi, my name is Muhammad from Muhammad Najib, and I will be explaining to you the history of Scotland. Firstly, You know that Malaysia was independent during 31st August 1957, right? But in compared to Scotland, Scotland is actually more of an independent kingdom under the sovereignty of the British Empire, which is now currently held by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Even though Scotland is now under the reign of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Scotland itself actually has its own parliament where it creates its own rules by the uniqueness of their country, and also by the uniqueness of how they diverse themselves around with others. The Scottish Parliament was actually established in 1st July 1999. Surprisingly, even though the Scottish people are actually under the sovereignty of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, they actually want to be independent themselves back then in history, during the mid-1900s. Scottish Parliament themselves actually held a referendum whether they want to be an independent country or not. The majority of the Parliament actually chose the sovereign to continue reigning Scotland rather than being independent themselves. To better understand Scotland, we have to know their history, and Scotland is very enriched with history. This is an interesting fact actually. Scotland and England, between those two kingdoms, actually has many wars and were not in par for a long time. Some of the wars are the First War and the Second War. Those two wars actually were quite played a major part in creating Scotland's history, whether they be under the sovereignty or whether they will not be under the sovereignty. To be more specific, the First War actually didn't play a major part in determining whether it will be under the sovereignty of the British Empire or not. But the Second War actually contributed to the British Empire or the Kingdom of England in taking or invading their lands and creating what we now see as the United Kingdom. But to be blunt, the United Kingdom is actually a huge empire, consists of many kingdoms. Scotland is only part of a kingdom in a huge empire, United Kingdom. So don't think of it as like Scotland played a major role in creating a United Kingdom, but only making a United Kingdom to what it is right now. In comparison to Malaysia, we know that Malaysia is now not colonized by the British Empire, but we're actually still under the Commonwealth of the United Kingdom, and Scotland is not under the Commonwealth of the United Kingdom, but it's only part of the United Kingdom where it owns the Commonwealth. According to Scotland's history, they even have kings and queens dating back till the early 1100s or even before that, according to history. But in Malaysia, we only have kings dating back till the late 1800s. The big differences in Malaysia is that in Malaysia we only have kings taking leading positions as the head of the sovereign, whereas in Scotland, the Kingdom of Scotland, they have kings and queens both taking positions as leading sovereignty. According to recent history right now, or the recent sovereign, we now have Queen Elizabeth as the head of the sovereign of the Kingdom of Scotland. Finally, when we see Scotland, we see their famous landmarks, and we know that they have faced many conflicts throughout history, as well as many changes in making history, and that's what it shapes, and that's all the reason why Scotland is what it is right now. It's what it shapes to be.
So the end of that video marks the end of our video. So we would like to thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor, for your attention, and hopefully you're well informed as well entertained by the video that we made.
Thank you, Doctor, for teaching us this one sem, and we hope we'll see you in the future.
For teaching us for one whole semester and for reminding us to be a better person. So that's all from us. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Annyeonghaseyo.